everyone, it's Crafty Music Lover here, and today I'm going to be doing the second half of my August journal entries of my One Page at a Time by Adam J. Kurtz. Some of you guys may have seen the first half already. If you haven't, I will leave that in the description box down below so you guys can check that out. But without further ado, we're just going to get into the second part of my August entries. We're going to start with the 16th of August 2020, and the first prompt says, what is your name and how were you named? What does it mean? Basically, it's just asking you to describe where you got your name from and what it means. So this page I actually covered it with a piece of white paper because the page after it kind of bled through a little bit, but I used a combination of Posca paint pens and colored pencils to fill out the lettering of where my name is and things like that. Underneath my name, I used a just normal purple gel pen to write down what my name means, where it came from, and how I was named my name. For the next page, it says, what are you searching for? And on that specific day, I was feeling super sentimental and I had just watched a bunch of Hallmark movies. So I wrote down that I'm searching for love. And I wanted to keep the background pretty simple for this one as well. And I just colored it in with various colors of colored pencil. And then the word love I wrote in with a red Posca paint pen. When you turn the page, you'll see that the date goes from the 17th to the 19th, and we will go ahead and flip over to where the 18th is located. On that specific day, I did not particularly want to fill out the grid page, which is the 19th, so I kind of flipped through the book until I found a prompt that inspired me, and on that specific day I just did not feel like going to work, so I wanted to motivate myself. So this prompt says to copy the line 20 times or until you learn your lesson, and I just wrote I can do anything over and over and over again until I felt motivated. On the background of the page, I used a Crayola crayon to color the yellow background. I have a Mickey head hole punch that I used to make those two pink Mickey heads there. And then I have this paper flake of a girl holding a camera. I have a ton of them in black and white, and I just used that because I used to be a photopass photographer for Disney, so I thought it kind of fit well for the theme, and I just colored her in with colored pencils. When you flip back over to the 19th, it is just a page that says, if you find numbers overwhelming, a grid can help. Space them out, add them up. It's not so bad if you think about it differently. Draw your first grid here. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it took a very long time for me to figure out what I wanted to do with this specific page, but I looked on the back of one of my scrapbook pages and it had this like grid kind of design on it. So I glued that in on the page and decided to test out some ink pens that I got, and I just picked a couple words that had the same number of letters in them and just drew a few random designs around the edges of the word and kind of just decided to make that page very relaxing for me. And then the purple dots, I used a purple Posca paint pen, and then I just finished the page off with a little bit more color and I used washi tape to do that. On this next page, it says to write down an insecurity on the page and then flip the page. So what I did was I put my biggest insecurity, which is honestly not that uncommon. My biggest insecurity is my body, and without going into a lot of detail on my insecurity, I wanted to kind of reflect how I felt in the moment. And I had been on Instagram earlier that day and I found a picture from a YouTuber I follow. Her name is Megan Weller. I will leave her information down in the description box below for you guys. And I saw a picture that she drew of this gymnastic girl looking in the mirror, and I don't think it was meant to be like an insecurity kind of picture, but that's how I felt. So I wanted to recreate that picture, and obviously I did not do every single thing that she had done. I changed everything up, the hair, the glasses, you know, the body, the movement, everything in there. I really like how it turned out, and I used a lot of watercolor pencils, which I was experimenting with, and unfortunately they did bleed through a little bit, which you can see on the pants there. On the next page, the watercolor did actually bleed through to this next prompt, and so in order to kind of hide the bleeding on the page, I just used a memo sheet that I had and covered that over the background of the area that bled through. And the prompt actually says to just write what you think you'll be doing in 5 years and if you're on track. So I cut out a piece of lined notebook paper and just wrote how I felt I would be in 5 years. On the opposite page there is the prompt that I did on the 18th, so we're just going to move on to the next page, which is to describe something that you saw on the ground. And I wrote why there is a giant plastic bag on the ground there, but for the decoration on the page I used a blue gelato pastel, and for the wording I used my Winsor Newton Pro brush markers to write down how I felt, and then to color in the plastic bag I used a combination of my black Posca paint pen and a gray colored pencil. On the opposite page over here, you can see that it's a pretty simple prompt, and it was just a black and white picture of a phone that had something like text bubbles for you to send a text to that person you met last night. And because of the current situation in the world, and you know, because I don't like going out, I don't go out anywhere, so on that little speech bubble I colored it in with a blue watercolor pencil, and I said, "What person? I have no friends. I don't go out. I don't like people, so I stay at home and craft and watch YouTube and Disney." And I used a white gel pen to write that in after the watercolor had dried. For the phone background, I just used a Winsor Newton Pro brush marker to color that in, and then for the blue background I used my new watercolor markers that I have, and they are by the brand Recollections, and they're watercolor marker crayons, and they do bleed through horrendously, so you'll see on the next page how I managed to avoid that. So on this next page, the prompt says to go off the grid, and I thought immediately of like somebody being on their cell phone and for them to just like get away from their cell phone. So I drew this person walking on like the side of the road with her phone in her hand, and I actually drew this on a separate piece of paper, and I used those watercolor markers that I had been experimenting with on the previous page, and I wanted to kind of try and see how they would work on actual watercolor paper, and they worked a lot better. I'm still not the best at watercolor, so it's a little splotchy, but I'm happy with it. On the next page, it is a sick day checklist, and because of, again, the current situation in the world, I hope to never fill this out, but because of the seasons changing and it's starting to get a little bit colder outside in Florida, it does kind of trigger a little bit of a sickness, but I wrote down the things that I like to have whenever I am sick on there, and I wrote that in with just a black ink pen. The background I filled in with a blue gelato pastel, and then I felt that the page needed a little bit more something, so I drew in a couple of little images that kind of went with the wording that I put on there. So I like to have lots of tissues, so I drew a tissue box. I like to have lots of vitamin C, so I drew a little orange juice there. I really like to be comfortable when I'm sick, and I don't like to be in like regular clothes, so I take a lot of PJs, and I like to sleep a lot when I'm sick, so I drew this girl who's like in this really nice comfy blanket, and she's kind of like coughing because obviously she's sick. So I really like this page. It's pretty simple, but it was a lot of fun to fill out. On the next page here, it just has a place where you can write a bunch of different ads. So it says for you to put an ad on the page, and I kind of just thought, well, I should just promote my YouTube. So I put one of my most recent videos on here, and I just drew this little girl. It's supposed to be me holding my polymer clay charm box, and I wrote, you know, in there basically what you'd see when you open up a YouTube video. And then the background I colored in with a peachish like pink gelato pastel. And then the image I colored in with various colored pencils. On the opposite page, it had a little prompt that said, "Did you do that sick day checklist page? Maybe it's just me, but I feel a little tickle in my throat. Better be safe than sorry." And unfortunately, I did have a little tickle in my throat, but it wasn't sickness, it was allergies. And so to kind of go with that theme, I drew this little image of a girl blowing her nose. So I colored her in with some colored pencils, and then I wrote the word allergies in with a pink Posca paint pen, and I use a letter stencil to do that. And in the background, there is supposed to imitate like pollen and dust in the air because that's usually what triggers my allergies. And I actually used Crayola crayons to do the background, and I dipped a Q-tip in rubbing alcohol to kind of smear it around and make it a little bit less waxy looking. So I'm really pleased with how this page turned out. It's probably one of my favorites. On this next page here, it just says to write a letter to your mom, and so again I cut out a piece of lined notebook paper and just wrote "Dear Mom" and wrote everything down about how I wanted to write a letter to my mom. The background, I used a combination of a peach and pink gelato pastel, and I felt that the page needed something a little bit more to it, so I used a brownish gold ink pen and kind of just colored the background in with this mandala kind of design. And I used to do this a lot in the corner of my notebooks at home and at school, so I thought that that kind of fit well with the theme. This next folded page is actually a part of a prompt, and I actually did both of these pages at the same time because you can't really do one without doing the other. So when you unfold the page, the first prompt says to write yourself a secret motivation and then fold this page up. So what I did was I drew a picture of this girl going shh, and I actually used a Google image to help me do this page, so I will link that Google image in the description box below. I colored her in on a separate sheet of paper. I used a combination of my Winsor Newton Pro markers and watercolored pencils, and I just cut her out and pasted her on the page. And then my secret motivation, I put "You are beautiful." And then the background, I use those watercolor Recollections crayons in a gold color and just colored the background of that. I also covered it with this packing tape so that it would seal the page up and make sure that it would withhold a lot of folding and bending. And then on the back, I basically just doodled a bunch of flowers. So I colored the entire background in with pink paint, and then I doodled in with some Posca paint pens and some colored pencils, the flowers and all of the other designs on there. And then when I folded the page up, I wanted to kind of commemorate the fact that it's a secret page. So with a red Posca paint pen, I wrote "shh" and "top secret" on the pages. This next page is probably my favorite page. I really like this page a lot. It says, all the prompt says is to just leave me alone, please. And I thought of how I feel when I come home from work. I just want a little bit of peace and quiet after I get home from a stressful day, and I just want to be left alone for just a few minutes. And so I put this girl, it's supposed to be me, sitting on the floor, and she's got her hands over her ears and she's silently screaming "Please go away, leave me alone." And I used Winsor Newton Pro markers to color her in. I also kind of did a little bit of shading with some colored pencils. The background I painted with just this regular black paint, and then I wrote on a separate piece of paper just a bunch of things that I hear while I'm at work, and I cut them out in little bubble kind of cuts and just pasted them all around the page. I also want to say that I absolutely love my job, but just like any other job where you work with a lot of people, sometimes you just need a few minutes to just relax. And so I just thought it would be really funny to kind of write that down. On this final page here, again, probably one of my favorite pages is a describe yourself in 15 words, and I have to admit this page was really hard for me to do. I don't typically describe myself, so trying to find 15 words to describe me was a little bit difficult, but what I did was I wrote down some words on a regular piece of paper, and then using some pink, purple, blue, and green paint, I kind of covered the background in. What I did to kind of decorate this page is I wrote 12 of the words that describe me on a journaling card page. So I added a couple of stickers of like sweet themed, and I just put a few things that I thought described me well. And then what I did here was I also added the 3 words that I think describe me the best, and I wrote that in a black Posca paint pen. So you can see creative, sensitive, and Christian are on there. Those are the 3 words that I feel like describe me the most. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the description box down below what your favorite page was from this section. If you guys watched my last one page at a time video, let me know what your favorite one was for the entire month. Also, let me know if you guys are excited to see September's one page at a time entries. I really hope you enjoyed seeing how I decorated a few of these pages in my one page at a time. I'm really excited to continue on. I had a lot of fun just experimenting with different kinds of coloring utensils. I feel like I'm getting into a kind of very specific creative kind of outlook on my pages. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!